hear someone. I've talked to one or two people in a group that is going to be leaving a little bit early. I'd like to make sure you guys all have your gift of the day, but my exchange of that is we want to hear from you on your experience. So make sure you take that survey from your phone, from your home computer, or some other time here in the next couple of days, because we'd like to make sure we can improve this event and get more girls to come and expose you guys to different opportunities and different careers. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kelsey.
Good afternoon. Oh, perfect, it's working. All right, so let me know if you ever can't hear me in the back. I've rarely been accused of being a little too quiet. So my name is Kelsey Getchow. If you are on Twitter, feel free to tweet me or anything that we're talking about today during the talk, and I'll put my contact information up at the end. Think about questions. We'll leave some time for questions at the end, and I'd love to hear from you as well. So in my role right now, I manage multi-million-dollar website projects for hospitals and health systems. But 13 years ago, I was sitting in your shoes. How many of you are high school seniors in here? Quite a few. Congratulations. This was me as a high school senior. I know it may look a little older than 13 years. I think the black and white doesn't help. But I was sitting in your shoes thinking that I wanted to be either an engineer or a pilot. So I was looking forward to college, and I'd gotten accepted into the Air Force Academy. Who's heard of the U.S. Air Force Academy? Anybody? You? Okay, great. Who's heard of Annapolis or West Point? Okay, a few more. So similar, but it's just the Air Force's version. So it's in Colorado Springs, and it's a 4-year college, and basically you go for 4 years. It's a pretty rigorous academic as well as physical and military training. And when you graduate, you have your degree, but then you also owe back 5 years as an active duty military member, as an officer, because your college is free. So that's kind of the trade-off. So I was sitting in your seat now. I started basic training in June, and it was the shortest summer break ever, June 26th, 2003, started basic training. My husband likes to show this picture on the left whenever people are making fun of bad haircuts. So that was me in basic training. We did still have to cut our hair at the time. But the reason that I show this is I know what it's like to be a female working as a minority, whether it's in technology or in the military. When I went into the Air Force Academy, it was 16% women, so 1/6. So my entering class, we had about 1,300 cadets, which equates to about 175 freshmen coming in, 1,130 or so men. So I know what it's like to be the minority in the classroom, to be the minority in your group, and this was a bit of a shock for me, a little bit of an adjustment, as you can expect. You know, you kind of get hit with all the military training, a lot of physical training as well as academic. But this is where I went to high school. So I had done an all-girls Catholic high school. So to go from that into the academy was a little bit of a testosterone shock. And I have to admit that that adjustment was challenging to say the least. So my freshman year at the academy, you go through basic training all summer. And then in September, you start your classes. And the way that the Air Force Academy is set up is that they want you to have a very broad range of a number of different topics, because they want you to be able to graduate and be able to talk enough about a number of topics that you can at least ask the right questions. You can at least have a good starting point for some of those either topics or just subject matter. So, for example, my freshman and sophomore schedule included things like physics, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, aeronautical engineering, astronautical engineering, chemistry, advanced calculus, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to be an engineering major. So one of my, so you have this kind of broad range, but then you also take classes like physiology, philosophy, law, management, psychology. So they want you to just have enough of an understanding that you can at least ask the questions if you're in a conversation or leading a team that relates to one of these different topics. So my freshman year, one of my lowest grades and one of the classes that I struggled with the most was computer science. So before you write me off as being the most unqualified lunchtime speaker, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I learned in that class, because I think it's much more important than my coding ability was then or ever will be. So in computer science class and classes at the academy are about 12 to 30 people. And this one in particular, I was the only female. So it was a whole room of other freshmen, cadets, and me. And I remember asking questions, and I just couldn't get my code to work. And there was this very obnoxious little exercise that we had to do where we had to kind of code the snake to move around the screen. And I was asking a lot of questions, and it just wasn't working. And at some point, and I can't exactly pinpoint when, but I decided that I just wasn't a good coder, and I just wasn't good at computer science, and that's why it wasn't working. When in fact, I stopped asking the questions, and that was really the issue. When I look back now, I can tell you that it wasn't that I wasn't a good coder, it was that I wasn't okay asking the question and not being a perfect coder right away. So I wasn't okay putting myself out there and being okay looking bad by asking question after question after question, or even admitting that I wasn't picking it up as fast as my other classmates. And in my mind, they were just getting it faster. They were just better engineers. They were just better at coding. But in reality, it was 2004. So most of my male classmates really hadn't had any other experience to coding either. It wasn't like they'd been doing it since they were quite young. Most of us had never had any computer science or computer coding classes in the past. So a couple of months ago, I saw a TED Talk, and it was done by, has anybody ever heard of TED Talks? Yes? Okay, great. So it was done by a woman named Rashima Sanjani, and she founded Girls Who Code. And one of the things that she talks about in that TED Talk, has anybody ever seen that, by the way? Yep, okay. So a couple of people. So it's a great talk. I encourage you to Google it. One of the things that she talks about is that their instructors in the Girls Who Code classes report similar things, especially in their first few weeks of their interactions with students. And time again, they'll say things like, we had a female student call us over and say, I don't know what code to write. And the instructor will look at her screen and she'll see a blank text editor. And then she'll hit undo a couple times and she'll see the code that they had written come back on the screen. It wasn't that they didn't know what code to write, it was that they weren't okay with their code not being perfect. And so they deleted it all. So, computer coding is hard. Any technology is hard. It's trial and error. You write some code, it breaks. You write some code, it works. Eventually it works. It all goes together. Maybe a small tweak makes a huge difference. Or maybe you get it right away. But her experience in which she was describing that, it was almost like a little light bulb. It was like, that's what happened to me in computer engineering class. I couldn't get it. And instead of saying, it's okay to have the trial and error, to keep asking those questions, to be okay putting my hand up and taking the risk of looking bad, or even just admitting that I don't know it all already. That was the same experience that I had in class that she's reporting that girls time and time again have when they're working in technology or even just in fields where they're not necessarily equal playing field, just from the numbers perspective. So she reported that, and I had a similar experience when I got out of the military about 3 years ago when I was looking for jobs. I was looking for jobs that I was completely qualified for, and within the last year I read a different study that said, in general, women will apply for jobs if they're 100% qualified, and men will apply for jobs if they're 60% qualified. That is playing by a whole different set of rules, right? So I thought was really interesting, that was a great study, but what was really interesting was that Harvard Business Review did a follow-up study to ask the people who didn't apply, why did you not apply? And I know this is really small, especially in the back, but these are the results. So time and time again, and the gray, I know it's a little bit white out, is women, and the blue is men. So time and time again, it wasn't that women didn't think they could do the job well. So when they didn't apply, it wasn't, I didn't apply because I didn't think I could do the job well. In fact, that's the lowest reason why they didn't apply. So only 9%. So of everybody else, there's really kind of two common themes that I see here. One, they were following the rules, so they didn't want to take the risk. So if you read through these, it's, I didn't think they'd hire me because I didn't meet the qualifications. I didn't want to waste the energy. I wanted to follow the rules. Or, I was being respectful of the time and preferences they had for the application. They made it clear who they were looking for. Again, I wanted to follow the rules. Or or I didn't think that they would hire me since I didn't meet the qualifications, and I didn't want to put myself out there thinking that I was likely to fail. So I didn't want to take the risk. So of everyone who didn't apply for jobs, it's either one, I'm following the rules, or two, I don't want to take the risk if I'm not 100% qualified. And that got me thinking, everyone in here has played bingo before? Yes? Okay, very common. So it's almost like playing